All right. I'm excited to talk to you all today about Webmentions and Eleventy. I like to say they're a match made in heaven. See the two hearts? My name is Sia Karamalegos. You can find me on Twitter. I am the Green Greek. I'm pretty active on there, so feel free to message me or at me to ask questions later on. And this is me. I'm in New Orleans at Mardi Gras. I like making my own costumes and doing other creative activities. And then you can find out a lot about me on sia.codes. I do web development, agency work, and then I also do presentations and teaching and other stuff. And writing, I guess. You don't, my slides are deployed here. You don't have to write all of that down. If you just go on sia.codes, I have already pushed this up, and it's one of the featured articles. So you can get the slides there and a little bit about the presentation. And then if there's a video later, I'll post that as well on the same post. So what are we even going to talk about today? This is my show and tell. Well, Webmentions are really cool. So this is my blog, and this is an example article. And if I scroll down to the bottom of the article, I have this little section called Webmentions. And you can see there's likes and retweets and replies. There's no form to make a reply. Like, I don't have comments on here. This is all done through Webmentions. And a lot of these things are from Twitter. They're like the likes and the retweets and the replies, but then some of them are actually from other websites. So what is that? A web mention enables one website to notify another website that the former contains a reference to the latter. So that's like a technical definition. Another explanation from IndieWeb is that when you link to a website, you can send it a web mention to notify it. If it supports web mentions, then that website may display your post as a comment, like, or other response, and presto, you're having a conversation. Please excuse the dog grunts in the background. She's like down here grunting as she gets more comfortable. But so what is IndieWeb? What do I mean about IndieWeb? I'm not sure how many of you have ever kind of looked into that, but IndieWeb is a people-focused alternative to the corporate web. So it's all about like owning your own content. So principles of the IndieWeb: owning your own domain. I should have got my clicker out. Own your own content and data. Optionally syndicate elsewhere. So for example, my blog posts, I host them on my own website. I will always have them, no matter if another website goes down like Medium or whatever. But I also put them on dev.to as, and I set the canonical link there. You have to do that for SEO, but you can have duplicate content as long as you set that canonical link. So I can syndicate, and then I can also still connect with everyone. And in my case, I'm using Webmentions to do that, like how I interact with other people. So how does it all work? Well, webmention.io is a hosted service that kind of collects all this webmention data. When you sign up for it, you can put these links in the head of your HTML to collect webmentions and pingbacks. Pingbacks are like a legacy protocol that existed before webmentions, so you might not need that part at all. So this allows webmentions.io to collect webmentions on your behalf. So if someone else mentions you, it will be collected in that API. But we also, and then you can request all of your mentions from there to render them. But we can also send them as well. You would send them as a post request to the endpoint with a source, which is like the content that you wrote, and then the target, which is whatever you're replying to. And that looks like this with a curl. If you don't do a lot of curling and you like forms, this little mini form is on my website down here. You can manually send me a web mention by putting in the URL of your website. And that just has this form action, which is to that same URL, but as a post request. And here's the input where they put the source. And then I have a hidden link or hidden input with the link for my page, with my page URL. So that's how you can send a web mention. So that's all cool, but like I said earlier, I'm pretty active on Twitter. And so I want to bring in those interactions too. And Bridgie is a service that allows you to grab web mentions from these different social networks. I at least for coding, I don't really use these other ones so much. Yeah. Has anyone used GitHub as a social thing? I guess you could tag things there, maybe in like a README or something. I know, that's interesting. Oh, I guess PRs and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of a use case, and I'm not enough of a stylish person to integrate my Instagram, but yeah. So I can connect my Twitter and then grab those as mentions as well. So what does that look like when I actually log in and link my accounts? So you can see the Green Greek and Sia.codes. Is most of the, like, these are kind of like your notifications. Most of these are not related. Like there's no web mention targets. But here I retweeted an old tweet with a post, and you can see that it actually has this target, this web mention target. It's an older article I wrote about, actually it's the article that I wrote that's on this topic. So I can see that now. And then whenever I request my web mentions, they're in there. So what does this process look like? We have to set up all of our services. First, you start with IndieAuth, so you can log in with your domain. And then you sign up to on Webmentions.io to grab those link tags to put in the head of your HTML. And then you want to securely save your API key. And we'll talk about how to handle that later. I used a .m file, but that was before I learned about Netlify CLI. So all of this, my whole website is done with Eleventy, Netlify, and GitHub. And but with Netlify CLI, you can more easily save and use those in variables without accidentally sharing them publicly. And then you can optionally sign up for other services for sharing, like social media services through Bridgie, for example. I think Bridgie is one of the ones used the most, but it'd be interesting if anyone else knows more about some other services. I know people use Telegram a lot. I have not looked into that as much either. All right, let's get to the Eleventy part. Here's my duotone possum. We're on the road to Eleventy now. All right, so this is an 11-minute talk. I'm not going to go in depth, but I already have this blog post that I wrote. That's a really in-depth step-by-step, has all the code that you can follow along. But I'll give you kind of a high-level overview and how it all works here. So the process in production, I don't want to do this every time I do a build locally, but in Netlify, I want it to fetch new web mentions during the build and store them in a cache file, render them, of course, on the page. And then I want to set up periodic builds because I don't want to get it to get stale and just wait until the next time I push up changes to my code, for example. So we'll talk through each of these. Fetching new web mentions. This doesn't have all the code like the fetch, but the URL looks something like this. You have your API URL, your domain, your secret token, how many you want the per page. And since in my data file, I save a last fetched attribute, that's the last time I fetched. So I only want to get new web mentions. And I mentioned a lot of prior art down here. I think Zach is on here. I don't think Max is, but there's a lot of different people have worked out how to do this, and I borrow from them, and I thank them for their hard work. Now you write that to a cache file. All of this code is kind of simplified because I didn't want to go in depth, but we're using the file system to save those and like merge them with our other ones and save them. And then we want to render them. These are some new filters I wrote to handle that data. So getting web mentions for a particular URL, like for each of my blog posts, getting the size of them, and then getting the type, like is it a like, a reply, a retweet, etc. And then I want to set all my variables in my template, like the mentions, likes, like size, replies, reply size, and etc. There's actually more. And then render them. I loop through the data and then send them to another partial. So if replies is greater than 0, then I want you to go ahead and show these replies. And then it's some more standard nunjuck things. So like, if there's an author, put the author name. If not, say anonymous. And then give the text of the reply. And then I quickly learned early on that I needed to truncate this text because some people have very long replies, especially if they're coming from other websites. And it was like longer than my article. So it's like, or it quotes like my entire article and I don't really understand what's going on. So I truncate it. And then I also link to the source, the web mention URL, because I want to make sure that people have access to that full thing. Or like, you know, if they want to go to the tweet or the website, they have full access to that. So that's in a nutshell, the rendering part. So how do I make it periodically grab new web mentions? Well, I fake it. I fake a cron job on Netlify using GitHub Actions. And there's an article here how to do it. And then also if you don't know how to read cron stuff, you can go to Cron Tab Guru. But in this example, I say every 4 hours at the 20-minute mark, I want you to send a post request to my Netlify build hook. And so that's what it does. Every 4 hours, it does that. And this is free on GitHub and Netlify. If your build is really big, you do have to be careful, you know, with your limits. But for my basic blog, I'm not hitting any of my build hour limits. So yeah, that's cool. It's already 11 minutes, but here's my party possum. Thanks for your time. Those are the slides again. That is not the right slides link. That's from an old presentation. If you want to know about responsive images, there's the slides for responsive images and the tutorial link. But if you just go on sia.co, just like, because I just posted it, it's the first article, and then that will link you to the slides. But thanks a lot for your time, and that was fun.